So I am here representing CFRE, and I will encourage you to test and apply for your certification, but not for the reasons that you think. I actually am a volunteer today. I'm a CFRE ambassador, and in my full-time job, actually I'm in my 12th year as a university vice president, and I'm here because I want to give back to the industry and encourage all of you in your career paths. So with that said, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Katy Herbert Kotlarczyk. She is the department head and senior director of gift planning at the University of Colorado, a 4-campus system spanning the state. Katy's previous CU experience includes serving as the head gift planner for the CU Boulder campus and as a major gifts officer for the Leeds School of Business. Katy is currently serving as a board member and the vice president for the Colorado Planned Giving Roundtable. She completed her MBA at the Cal-State School of Business at DePaul University. She has both an undergraduate and master's degree from Stanford University, where she served as captain of the women's gymnastic team and earned All-American honors on the balance beam. She enjoys living in Colorado with her husband and 3 children, and the title of her presentation today is 8 Ways to Weave Gift Planning into Your Next Donor Visit. So if you'd all help me give Katy a very warm welcome to Southeast Michigan. Katy?
Let me just get this guy off of here. Well, it's nice to be here today. Whenever anybody mentions that I was a former gymnast, I feel like you expect that I'm going to come running up and do some sort of leaping. I thought about it, but I'm not going to do that. So, how many of you consider yourself frontline major gift officers? A good portion of the room. And what about more of a gift planning is your full-time job? Just a couple. And then is anybody here more of a financial advisor or works at a for-profit institution? Okay. So the majority of you are development officers, and that is probably the target audience for this presentation, but hopefully those of you who are gift planners or working at a financial institution will also find something interesting. So as Mitch mentioned, I work at the University of Colorado and was thrilled to come out here today at the invitation of Lori Angel and the conference co-chairs. And I am the head of our gift planning office. We have about 350 people in our advancement operation at the University of Colorado. It's much bigger than most people think. And we, this year, in the fiscal year 19, we are on track by June 30 to close about $50 million in revocable plan gifts and $3 million in life income gifts. We have a 7-person team on our gift planning, in our gift planning office. So it's actually a pretty large operation. Today I'm going to talk about some ways that we have been able to leverage our gift planning office to work closely with our development officers to have more gift planning conversations. So 8 ways to weave gift planning into your next donor visit. During our time together, we'll talk briefly about some of the things that I think are key to great gift planning conversations. We'll walk through the 8 ways, and then I'm actually going to give you some time to think about a donor where these types of conversations might work for your next visit. So to start off, gift planning. What is gift planning all about? Well, I think gift planning should really be about what to give, any number of these assets, and when to give, over maybe 3 buckets of time. So what to give might include appreciated stock, cash, that weird art, eye is artwork, home, investment or brokerage accounts. And it's not about your kids or giving away your kids. It's about who gets what, right? So some people think if I give to charity, I'm going to be disinheriting my children. Well, in reality, it's really about what's the smart way to give to which populations. When to give, if you really want to simplify gift planning, it's really about planning your giving. So you might give right now or within a 5-year time span, like a 5-year, multi-year pledge. You might give after lifetime, which is your bequest, your beneficiary designation, or you might do something that's kind of in the middle, which is life income gifts or split interest gifts. So those are your charitable gift annuities, your charitable remainder trusts. You really don't see a lot of those, right? They're out there, but most of the time we're talking about outright after lifetime. I think the ideal is if your taco can be a Dorito. Get everything, a blended gift, right? So I want to get a little piece of everything in a particular gift. Well, that's all well and good, and of course we all, aspire to this, but how do I get there? How do I open the conversation? It's the number one question I get from our development officers is, help me start the conversation, help me transition the conversation. So that's going to be our focus today. I think it's not really about what you say, it's about what you hear. So I want, when you go out to have your donor conversations, I want you to be thinking about PAPA. So PAPA is an acronym that was created by Washington State University, their advancement office. And it's this nifty little acronym of what you should be listening for when you're having a conversation with your donors. So the first P stands for people. Who are the people in this donor's life? A is for assets. What kind of assets do they have? Real estate, second homes. The second P is for passions. What do they care about? We're all really good about that, right? What are their values? What do they care about? The third P is for plans. So what's going to happen in this person's future? Our financial advisor friends are very good about this. Sometimes we're not as good about thinking farther ahead in our donors' lives. And then finally, the last A is advisors. Again, it's not a place that we are really good at, but understanding, do our donors have estate attorneys? Do they have financial planners? Do they have accountants that they work with? We've heard some other people mention that today. So again, great, yes, Katy, I want to know all those things. How do I get these things in my conversations? Like I said, it's about listening. So this presentation is going to focus on how to ask the right questions so that you get the answers that you want to these sorts of topics. I will also say with these topics, a really great contact report will capture anything from these topics that you heard in your donor visit. So if you're out on a visit and you're coming back to put notes into your relationship database, try to think about PAPA. What did I hear that might fit in these categories, even if it's unimportant to you today? Because PAPA could be very important 20 years from now when your gift planning officer or your future development officer at your institution is looking to see, well, what is this person going to do in retirement? They told me they're coming up on retirement. Well, they might go back to one of your contact reports in your database and see, oh, they talked about this. This is something I can kind of hint at in my next conversation. So I'm going to break out the questions that we're going to talk about today into 3 categories. We're going to talk about early cultivation, developing relationships, and then close relationships. So in the early cultivation stage, it's really about stories, right? This is a brand new donor. This is somebody that you are meeting for the first time, the second time. Even if there's information in your database, you really don't have authorization to ask them some, questions that are probably too deep. So you want to start with questions like, sometimes I say to people, tell me your story. Or for University of Colorado, tell me your CU story. People love this. Even if they've told it to 5 other people who were in your particular role, they love it if you can start out just by telling their story. I would love to meet people at their homes whenever possible, their offices as a second option, and then anywhere else as a third option. When you're in someone's home, you can point at artwork, you can point at certificates or degrees, you can ask about the colors, you can ask a lot of good questions about, where did you get this painting? Tell me about your alma mater. It looks like you appreciate Western art. Where did that appreciation come from? You want to show genuine curiosity. I loved how Ray Odom was talking about the genuine spirit in a conversation. I think that's really true for gift planning. If you want people to open up, you have to actually care about their answers. I would also ask the people, tell me more about your connection to our institution. We're really good at that, or your organization. Like, we do that, but then we kind of stop and we sometimes go to our own business. I would dig deeper into those get-to-know-you questions. One that I love is, if you can fit it in, where did your name come from? What do you know about your grandparents? What was your grandmother's favorite recipe? Who in your family do you most resemble? Who in your family are you closest to? So why am I asking these crazy questions, right? These crazy questions can give you a sense of who this person is, and they can help you transition into some of the harder questions we're going to ask with a deeper relationship. So you're getting to know this person, but you're trying not to make it so shallow that it sounds like how they get to know everybody else at every cocktail party they've ever been at. You're trying to cultivate. You're trying to get an early relationship started. Also in early cultivations, plans. We talked about this as part of the Papa. So I might ask some questions about what are your plans in retirement? So you got to be a certain age, but even me in my age, I have plans for retirement, right? We all have plans of what we would do with our free time if we didn't go to work every day. Why do you talk to people about their plans in retirement? So if someone says to me, you know, we've had this vacation home for a very long time on the lake. There's lots of lakes here, out on the lake, and I just can never get to it. I'm hoping in retirement that I can get to that vacation home. What would you guys take from that? What is your feedback if someone says, oh, I've got this vacation home? Just someone shout it out. It's an asset, right? It's obviously an asset. What if they said, I've got this vacation home and we just never go there anymore? I had hoped in retirement that we would go, but it's just the grandkids are just not interested. Now what is it? An asset they could give, right? It's an asset that they could give. And all these wonderful techniques you learn at conferences like this, you can take that information and say, gosh, that's really interesting. We can talk about how that property could actually become a gift for the university for something you care about. But again, first we have to even know that they have that property and whether they're going to use it and whether they have family who's going to use it. So second homes. I like to find out about travel. Sometimes I'll dig straight in and just say, do you plan to travel in retirement? Why would I ask about travel? Do you guys ask?
It tells you how much money, in a way, not money, if they have a fluency.
Yeah.
If they're going to Europe, that's one thing. If they're going up north or
Yeah.
Kalamazoo, you know.
Right. It's another. Yeah, Kalamazoo is a great place, I'm sure. But it talks about a fluency. So if someone says, you know, I've saved my travel until I retire, or my goal in the next 10 years is to hit every continent, well, one, you know they're going to be spending a lot of money doing that. So while they might have a lot of money, they're going to need that money to do certain things in their life. It also tells you if they're going to be around. So a lot of our work is about getting a visit. And sometimes I think we are too dependent on the visit because that person needs to be in the same geographic location that we are at the same time. So if you work locally, or even in small regions, that's easier. But if you're talking to someone who has a vacation home in Florida, and you're always trying to meet them at the wrong time of the year, or someone who's going to be traveling quite a bit in their retirement, they might really want to make a gift, but your focus is all on getting the visit, and you're never going to line up your schedules. So the last thing in early cultivation is I would start asking people about their dreams. So I like to ask people that there's a program called Advancement Resources. They have this wonderful question that they recommend using word for word. They've tested it in their research. And the question is, what would you like to accomplish with your money that would be truly meaningful to you? What would you like to accomplish with your money that would be truly meaningful to you? I have asked this question so many times. The key to the question is to pause afterward and wait for someone to answer, because they're taken by surprise. Like, well, I don't know, I've never really thought about that. It opens this whole new frame of mind for people. Another question that I really like is, tell me about a joyful giving experience that you've had. So if they're more of a cranky person, I might ask them to tell me about a really bad experience that they've had, because I'm just kind of vibing with them. Like, you know, you don't really want to be here with me right now. Well, tell me what's been such a bad experience for you with philanthropy. Or tell me about when you met with a development officer before me and it didn't really go very well. And I'm trying to ease them into what it means to have a joyful giving experience. So we're going to pause for a second, and I'm going to give you guys a chance to practice asking one of these questions. So I have a third question that I like to do that I think is easier than the two I just mentioned. And it is, if you had $100,000 to spend before X date, and we're going to use June 30, because that's the end of our fiscal year. Does anybody have a June 30 fiscal year end? Yeah, quite a few of you. Okay. So if you had $100,000 to spend before June 30, and you had to spend it on one charity, what would it be and why? I want you guys to partner up, turn to someone you don't know. I know you're sitting next to people you know, so find someone you don't know, because you don't know your donors like this. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes each to ask one another this question. If you had $100,000 that had to be spent at one charity before June 30, what would that charity be and why? Go.
What would you like to accomplish with
Your money,
Yeah.
that would be truly meaningful to you.
Oh, that.
And because you're an effusive note taker, I do have a handout. I just didn't want to give it away in the beginning.
Okay, that's all right.
Yes,
So
that would be truly meaningful to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, sorry. Oh yeah, because I was on the mic. I always forget that. I wanted to go out. So it's gonna be this slide. It's got this little box in it. It's probably I'm supposed to be there by 11:20. So coming up. All right, thanks. And tell me your name. Yes. Okay. If you haven't already, make sure to switch partners. Okay, one more minute. gather some feedback about which charities you chose. I'm going to ask somebody here. How hard was that activity? How hard was it to ask that question and have that conversation? Not hard. Do people generally agree, like scale of 1 to 5 if you raise your hand? 5 being it was really hard to have that conversation, and 1 being, or opposite. 1 hard, 5 easy. What do you guys think? Was it hard or easy? Easy. 5 easy. Do you think it would be possible to have that conversation with a donor in an early visit? Kind of early cultivation? It's kind of fun, right? How many of you knew right away what your charity would be? Like, raise your hand, like right away. The one you work for, hopefully. Not everybody. We change jobs a lot. I don't know. Some people. I've been at CU for 9 years, so I, feel pretty committed there. How many of you it took a little bit longer to kind of think of what you were wanting to do? I mean, $100,000 is a lot of money to go to a single place, right? You had to think about it. Yeah. Did your partners, did they do a good job kind of helping you coax it out of you if you weren't sure? Those people who weren't sure? Yeah. What were the techniques? Anybody want to speak up if there was something that they did that helped you kind of crystallize what you were, where you wanted to support? Anything? Yeah. No, sorry, back. Oh, you can do microphone. Yeah, yeah.
I can never tell when people are pointing
I
at
know.
me. Asking the question of where do you think it would make the biggest impact?
That's great. Yeah. That's a really good idea. Did anyone find it hard to listen without talking? Yes or no? Yeah. You're laughing, but I don't know why. Sometimes it's hard, I think, to listen. I'm a talker, and I find that I have to pause a little bit longer. It feels a little awkward to me, but I don't think it feels awkward to the other person. Because when I've done this exercise and I've had to answer, I need that time. I need a little bit of time to think and pause. So that's my, advice to you. When you go out to do this conversation, the pauses feel a lot longer to you if you're the asker than they do if you're the answerer. So let's get back. So we've developed a kind of a nice relationship here, right? Early cultivation, we've gotten to know a little bit about this person's plans, maybe even a little bit about their dreams. Now we're going to consider that this is a developing relationship, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper with this person. Don't worry, we're going to continue working on transition statements. Here we're talking about values. So how do I get at someone's values? One of the questions that I like is, what do your kids know about your philanthropy? Or what do your grandkids know about your philanthropy? Is there anyone else who should be part of this conversation? I'm going to tell you really fast. Here, I'll give you a couple more. What would you consider some of your deeply held values? This is a fun one. Do you think all people have the same values? Do you think all people have the same values? Now you have to be careful because you don't want to get into politics or religion unless you work in one of those types of organizations. But for someone in university, you got to be a little careful here with values because I think great development officers, you're sort of a chameleon, right? You kind of need to believe, you kind of got to be whatever they need you to be. And so be careful when you get in this value statement. It's not about you. It's about them. Which of our organization's values do you most align with? Or which of our organization's values align with yours? So rather than you telling them, let them tell you. Let them profess to you why they care about your organization. So I have to tell you, this whole thing about kids and grandkids and values, it really became real to me. I had a donor who I worked with. I think you all have worked with them. He was older, he was definitely a little cranky, and I was a newer development officer working with him. So he had seen so many of me, the types of me, that I was just another one coming into his world. So we worked together for 6 months or so, and I was doing the early cultivation, building trust and building relationship. And I realized, he was about 85. And we started to talk about his next 5-year gift because his current 5-year gift was expiring. So he was in the last year of his pledge. And I was talking to my boss, and he said, don't you dare close another 5-year gift with this person because it could very well be their last 5-year gift. I need you to have the bigger conversation. And I was a frontline development officer, not a lot of gift planning experience. And he said, I need you to have the bigger conversation about their legacy and what they want to accomplish here. They've been giving here since they graduated decades ago. So I sat in front of this donor and I asked them, what would you like to accomplish with your money that would be really meaningful to you? He evaded me for 3 visits. Every visit, I just kept coming back. I asked it every different way. He gave me answers like, well, I'll just give to that thing I gave to before. And I said, can you clearly explain to me what it is you've been giving to? No, I just signed a paper that someone put in front of me. Do you enjoy what you've been giving to? It's fine. Well, what would you like to accomplish that would be meaningful to you? We finally came around to it, and this does not happen very often. He said, I want to endow a chair. Most people don't even know what that means to endow a chair, but somewhere along his lifespan, he had figured out that he wanted to endow a chair, and I was taken aback because that was a lot more than what he had been giving previously, price-wise. So that's really interesting. I would love to help you accomplish that goal. Is there anyone else who should be part of this conversation? He said, well, my daughter is going to take care of all of my plans when the time comes, and so she knows what to do. So if I don't get it done during my lifetime, she'll take care of it after I pass away. And I said, that's wonderful, and lucky for me, I had met his daughter, and she was already a graduate of the institution. So this was one of the scariest phone calls I ever made, but I called his daughter. And I said, did you know that your father is leaning on you to play this role in his philanthropy? And she said, I had no idea. I had no idea. The conversation lasted 1 minute because she hung up with me and called him. And she said, I'm going to hang up with you right now. I'm not being rude. I have to call my dad immediately because he's never once talked to me about this. She talked to him. We eventually gathered the entire family together. The patriarch, the wife, who was a second wife, 4 of the kids, and we got them all in a room together. And they asked their own dad questions that they never asked before, like, Dad, I provided a giving history. Well, why did you give to this? And what's a chair? And why do you want to do a chair? And why is it important to you? This is about getting people in the room, right? And it all started from these early questions about who should be in the room. I thought you guys would like hearing that story. It was scary. That daughter could have said, mind your own business. And who do you think you are? But she didn't. And so sometimes you have to make that call of whether or not you're the right person to kind of force your way into that conversation. In developing relationships, this is number 5. You also want to talk about giving. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I think we're very good here. But some of the questions that I like to use, you support us so regularly. Do you think you will keep doing that for a long time? I noticed you sent us a check. Have you ever thought about giving an appreciated stock? I have used this so many times. Many people who you would think know better, they don't know about giving appreciated assets. And it's worth just bringing it up and saying it out. This is starting to get you in the transition, right? And they say, well, why would I give appreciated assets? And then you can talk about the avoidance of capital gains tax and things, again, that you're learning here. But it's a transition statement for me. I notice you always give us a check, or you always give cash. Did you know that cash is actually the least tax-advantaged way to give? Would you like to learn about other ways that you could give? Could I tell you a story about a way that somebody else gave who used to give cash? And they gave us a recent gift of real estate. So you're getting into that giving conversation. The 2 questions I think we all should be asking more now than ever. Do you have an IRA? What is an IRA? What does it stand for? Individual retirement account, right? Do you have an IRA? Do you have a donor advised fund? You should be asking this every time, and then again, put the note in your database, because even if they're not ready to give from those sorts of assets, it's really important to know about them. And I'm sure you're talking about this and reading about this, but these are wonderfully tax-advantaged ways that people are giving right now, and if they don't know about it, you're going to want to be the one to tell them about it. Do you have an IRA? Do you have a donor advised fund? If your organization offers life income gifts, you can also ask, would you be interested in receiving an income in return for your gift? So how many of you do like gift annuities or remainder trusts? A few, yeah. So this is how I usually open up the conversation. Would you be interested in receiving an income in exchange for your gift? Do you know what about 50% of the people say? No. No, I don't need any more income. I got plenty of income. I have an income problem. which is actually an income tax problem. We would all love to have an income problem. But a lot of them say no. And as a gift planner, that just saved me a 15-minute rigmarole all about gift annuities and remainder trusts to someone who would have no interest because they don't need income. They'd be a much better prospect for an outright gift than a life income gift. So head it off at the pass, get it early. And finally, number 6, developing relationships advisors. So we talked about this a little bit before. I just think we forget. So this is your reminder to ask people, do you work with any advisors? Do you have someone who does your taxes every year? I get an easy in on this because of my gift planning title, but if someone asks you any sort of tax question, like is this gonna be deductible? I would say, you know, I'm gonna give you that answer, but do you have someone who does your taxes every year, or do you do them on your own? I ask that all the time. You need to know what level of sophistication you're working with, because I have some people who really, really need to be working with a CPA, and they never will. They just don't believe in paying for those things. I need to know that because there's only certain types of gifts I'm going to talk about with that person if I know they're never going to have their own advisors. I have also asked, have you ever hired an estate attorney? And you'll get an earful about attorneys, but sometimes it's really good. So yes. The last question I would ask in the advisor section is, do you have an estate tax concern? I use this all of the time. You'll get a couple of responses. One, they will laugh in your face. Because what is the estate tax exemption right now? Over $11 million a person, right? So it's indexed toward inflation. So if you are married, that means you can stack all your assets in a pile until it reaches $22 million as a married couple. Anything over $22 million, you'll pay estate taxes on, federal estate taxes. Anything under $22 million, you can pass around during and after your lifetime, however you want, sort of. Please don't quote me on that, financial advisor guy. But if I ask someone, do you have an estate tax concern? And their answer is, I might. What does that tell you about that person? God, they probably have a lot of money. Because if I might means either I'm close to that $11 million threshold if I'm single, $22 million if I'm married, or it means I anticipate that my earning capacity is very strong and that I think I'm going to have a problem. I have been so surprised by the people who say that they have an estate tax concern. And I usually clarify with them that they don't just dislike the estate tax as a philosophical concept. I clarify with them. I said, oh, really, what are you doing to mitigate that concern? What are you thinking about doing in order to manage your concern? And then if they don't know, I will say something along the lines of, because it's really surprising right now how few people actually have to be concerned with this estate tax, because the threshold is over $11 million a person before you really even have to be concerned. And then they usually say, oh, that's not me. In the 80s, the threshold was, I think, $600,000, inclusive of your home. So in the 80s, tons of people had estate tax problems, and some people don't realize that they no longer have an estate tax concern. So that's one of my favorite questions. I would also say with advisors, don't be afraid to send people to advisors because they can be very, very helpful. I have had more than one donor go to their advisor, their financial advisor, and come back ready to give more money because their advisor has run the models that will show them that no matter how much they spend over the course of their lifetime, they will still have more than enough for the lifestyle that they want to live. So we picture financial advisors as people who won't let the money go, but there are great financial advisors out there running really interesting models, meshing with their clients to think about what their retirement spend is actually going to look like. And those people come back and they make outright gifts because they realize they have more than they thought they did. And that's becoming more common with this saving generation. People who have been investing in their own IRAs for a long time. So the last thing in developing relationships is markets. And this is something I don't think we think about very much. This is about someone's investment philosophy and their risk tolerance. So I ask people, hey, what do you think about what the stock market's doing today? Or this week, or recently? I don't really care how the stock market is doing overall. I mean, I care. But I want to know what they think. Why do I care about what someone thinks about the stock market? Anybody else use this sort of a question? Yeah. Yeah, you get a sense of their risk tolerance and how they talk about it. So if someone is really engaged in the stock market and they believe in the stock market, they tend to have a higher risk tolerance, right? So they're more willing to watch the market go up and watch the market go down and remain calm about that. That is someone who's going to be a little more comfortable doing something like a charitable remainder unit trust, right? Because the unit trust is invested and the value of it goes up and down over time. Versus someone who does not like the market. Market dips, even the slightest dip, they might get a little bit of anxiety. Those people are going to be better prospects for a charitable gift annuity. Because a charitable gift annuity pays your donor the same income stream every year, all of their lives. The same exact dollar amount. It's very stable, right? So that's someone who loves sort of the stability of getting the same amount year over year over year because they don't like the uncertainty of a market that could go down, right? The drawback of getting the same amount year over year over year is that it doesn't grow with inflation. So people who like the market and the growth of the market, they recognize that my $100 5 years from now is worth less than my $100 today, right? Because inflation. So 5 years from now, my $100 is going to be worth a lot less. So most people who are into the market are going to want to see things that have the potential to grow. They're not going to like a stable $100 every single year because the value will decline. So this is why I ask about the markets, and this is, again, a great transition area for me when I could say, you know, what do you think of the new tax bill? What do you think of the new tax legislation? And then I can provide a little bit of value by explaining something in the tax legislation that I know really well. You don't need to know the whole thing. Pick one thing. Know about the change in the standard deduction. And then I can use that as a transition to talk about tax-advantaged giving, right, which is a lot about what plan giving is about. I would say, I also use the question, where did you learn about investing? Or where did you learn about finances? How do you feel about having your own IRA? Do you wish you could have a pension? You know, like the old days, do you wish you could have a pension? Tell me, what are some of your primary financial concerns in the coming years? Sometimes people bring this up because they got to pay for a kid to go to college, right? So bring it up for you. But sometimes they don't. They're just hovering in the back of their mind. What are you worried about? What's coming up in your life that gives you pause? This is probably not a first visit question because you might already be starting to talk about giving. They know you're there. They know you're a fundraiser. They know you're thinking about a conversation on how this person can invest in your institution. So these are transition statements for you to get into that gift conversation, to be talking about a long-term gift. If someone is very concerned because Alzheimer's runs in their family and they think they're going to have really high health expenses late in life, you're going to have to be careful about the gift you're talking about if it's outright or after lifetime. Those people are probably going to be better after lifetime prospects than outright prospects. Because it's very hard for you in your position to help someone overcome a financial concern that's so deeply embedded as a family, like a potentially genetically or inherited health issue. So that's what I'm getting at here is try to tell me a little bit about what you think about money, right? So we've got one more. Close relationships. So the last one here is close relationships. You're talking about feelings. So a lot of what I've been talking about is not necessarily what people have, it's what they think they have. It's what they feel that they have, because having money is not the same thing as feeling like you have money, right? It's very different. And you'll find people all along the spectrum. So when you have a very close relationship, you're going to want to get into the feelings of that person. So you're going to want to ask, do you feel like you have everything you need to take care of the people you love and yourself for the rest of your life? It's one of my favorites, right? Do you feel like you have everything you need to be comfortable for the rest of your life? And if that's a hard question, sometimes I caveat it by saying, because that's the most important thing. The most important thing is that you live a comfortable life. You've earned it. You deserve it. Do you feel comfortable that you're going to be able to do that? I'm trying to walk them in to answering for me, right? Well, yeah, I'll be fine. I'm going to be fine. But you know, my wife is a little more nervous than I am. And then they can tell me more about that. How do you feel about your charitable giving to our organization right now? How do you feel it's going? Do you feel like you want to do more? Not do you want to do more, do you feel like you want to do more? And then one of my favorites, sometimes I do this weird, like it's like a premortem instead of a postmortem. So I'll say to them, you know, you've met with a lot of development officers. I know they kind of come, we kind of come and go in front of you. I'm hoping to stick around. When we sit down together 5 years from now, what do you hope we have accomplished over that time? So we're having this exact same meeting at this exact same place here at your kitchen table 5 years from now. What are you going to hold me accountable for? What do you hope we've accomplished? And that lets people set the plan, right? So they might say, well, I really hope I've done X, Y, Z for the organization. I hope we've gotten a new president. I hope, whatever it is that they are thinking about, they will start to explain it to you. And now you've got your roadmap for what you're trying to accomplish. Some people are nervous about asking these questions because they're worried it's going to open up like health issues or things that are just hard to deal with, like mortality, and they probably are, right? Those hard things are going to come up. The thing to remember is that they're not coming up because you're asking them. A lot of people are already thinking about these things, especially if you're dealing with a certain age population. So you're there to listen, right? And if they don't want to talk about it, they won't talk about it. So don't be afraid to ask the questions, because if they're ready to talk, a lot of people I found are really engaged in these conversations. They want to talk about it. They don't have a lot of outlets. But don't be afraid that you're opening up some can of worms that they've never thought about before. They are thinking about covering their healthcare expenses, getting their will finished, what the markets are doing, how their legacy is going to be created. So, transition language. We're going to go over just a couple of pieces, and then we're going to do one last activity before we close out here. So as I mentioned before, one of the sentences I ask is about, would you keep giving to us for a long time? Do you think you're going to keep sending your gift for a long time? Sometimes I'll switch that around depending on the point of the conversation. And I'll say to somebody, have you ever thought about what's going to happen when you're not here to send your annual check anymore? And if that's a hard question because you don't know the person well enough, one, don't ask it yet. But two, you can soften it by saying, because we think about that. Because people like you who are very loyal donors to our institution, we think about it all the time. What's going to happen when those loyal donors don't send their gifts anymore? So I want you to know, you the donor, I want you to know it would be great if you would consider leaving a gift in your will. Is that something you've ever thought about doing? So that's a transition for me, right? Have you ever thought about, this is a loyal donor, have you ever thought about what's going to happen when you can no longer send your check anymore? Well, we think about it. Sometimes I'll even pull some numbers and I'll say, people like you who give about $1,000 a year for us, College of Engineering, last year alone they gave us $230,000. What's going to happen if all those people stop giving? Well, one thing we like to talk to people about is whether they would translate that gift over into a bequest or into part of their legacy or part of their will. Sometimes I'll just straight out ask, right? Have you included any charities in your will? And raise your hand if you've asked that type of a question before. Yeah, it's not that hard. The first time I did it, I was scared. It's like, oh, this is a crazy question. But it's actually not that hard, Have you put any charities in your will? Thank you so much for your gift. We talked about all these great things. Have you already done it? A lot of people actually have already done it. And then all you're doing is trying to make sure that it's aligned with your organization. Sometimes I'll caveat it for this transition language. If it's hard, I'm having a hard time making the transition. We've done all this great cultivation. I'll say something like, I really wouldn't be doing my job unless I asked you one last question. Right? And that's kind of an easy in for you. It's easier for me with a gift planning title, but I think anybody can do it as a development officer. I really wouldn't be doing my job unless I asked you this one last question. Would you consider making a gift to our charity in your estate? Or estate is kind of a term that's, phasing out. So would you consider putting us in your will? Would you consider making us a beneficiary on your retirement account that you told me you had because I asked you? I already know you haven't. Russell James from Texas Tech, the researcher who's doing a lot of this work, because what I'm telling is just stories, right? I don't have any data. But one thing that Russell James has found is that people really respond when you use language like, many people like you, la 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 la. So I use this. I'll say, when I sit down with people like you, they're thinking about making us a beneficiary in their retirement account. Many people like you are thinking about what legacy they want to leave to our charity. Many other board members like you have come to me to ask about what more they could do for our charity. It's really compelling, isn't it? Like when you hear it in your brain, you say, oh, well, it's not me. She's not targeting me. It has to be true, right? So, don't lie. But you can use this language. Sometimes I use it with stories, right? Someone like you, from a story in our institution, I might not have sat down myself, but say, someone like you recently did a gift that, and it creates this, again, transition that's a little bit easier. So like I said, we're going to do a quick activity, maybe like 7 minutes here before we close. I want you on a piece of paper to write down the name of one donor who you know you need to have this conversation with. I'm assuming you came today because you want to integrate gift planning into a donor visit. So write down the name of one donor who you know, I got to go out and have this conversation. So write their name down, or a pseudonym or whatever if you don't want them to be revealed. And then after you write their name down, I want you to write 3 characteristics for this donor. Are they tall? Do they live in Kalamazoo? They have, 8 kids, whatever it is. Just 3 characteristics so you kind of have a picture, give a picture of this person. So Paige, one of our wonderful student workers here today, is going to hand out the question bank. So for those of you who took diligent notes, A+, because writing things down actually helps you remember it. But I also created a handout of many of the questions we talked about today, because I know I didn't put them in my slides. So Paige is handing these out, so you have them. And what I want you to do is turn to your partner, preferably the one you worked with previously, because you should have some level of comfort since you guys did that wonderful cultivation, early cultivation relationship building. I want you to turn to your partner. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. You're going to tell your partner the 3 characteristics of your donor. And your partner is going to be that donor for you. And you're going to practice asking them some of these transition questions, right? You're going to try out some of the techniques we did today, or some of the early cultivation questions. Again, we got the question bank so you could play around a little bit. So it's a little bit of play acting. I know, it's like a little tricky. It's not really role play. It's more that you just are going to try out these questions a little bit, how they sound coming off of your tongue, right? So maybe 3 minutes, and then I'm going to tell you to swap, and the other person will get to be the donor with the 3 characteristics. Make sense? Okay, ready, go. Okay, if you haven't, make sure you go ahead and switch partners. That was a quick 3 minutes, but go ahead and switch partners. Okay, we're going to close this session up. You guys have been so great sitting and listening. I know it's tough because this is such a fun conversation, but I'm going to take one more survey from you guys. On a scale of 1 to 5, so raising your hand again, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 is, I'm not feeling very good about asking these questions. I need a little more work. I don't have a lot of confidence. 5 is, I'm feeling really excellent. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do it tonight at my donor dinner, right? So 1 to 5, what level of confidence do you feel like you have in doing these types of conversations and these types of questions? 1 more, 3, 2, 4, 5. Got it. So why am I asking about confidence? Confidence is very important. As a last closing statement I will leave you with, any training you do on gift planning is only going to be effective if it results in your increased level of confidence. So I did a survey of a bunch of development officers, 28 development officers, talking to them about why they don't have more gift planning conversations. This was the major takeaway. A lot of development officers will ask me, well, just give me a couple sentences to describe every planned gift, and I will memorize it, and then I would tell it to my donor. I get it all the time. I said, I'm not going to do it. You're not good at that. You're very bad at that. You will get it wrong. You know what you're good at? You're good at telling stories, and you're good at listening to stories. So today what I've equipped you with is ways that you can ask questions and listen to the answers, and do it in a way that feels comfortable to you. Because if you can increase your level of confidence, you are going to be able to have these transition statements. You are going to be having more gift planning conversations. If you do it in a way that doesn't feel genuine to you, that's still too scary, stick to early cultivation for a while. Stick there for a while. Don't come over into some of those harder questions about the $100,000 gift. Wait until you're ready. What you're really doing right now when you're working with donors and trying to have these conversations, you're trying to weave these gift planning conversations in, you're trying to get someone to let you in on something that's very personal and that they might even consider a secret, right? They might have made a planned gift, it's a secret to them. You're trying to build up that trust in a way that lets you in on the secret, right? Their values, how they feel, what their family believes. That takes time, and it's not easy, but I should hopefully have showed you today some ways that you can ease into it. So thank you, you've been a wonderful audience, and I've loved being here. Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much, Katy. I'm sure everyone agrees it was a very helpful presentation, very easy to take in, and it's going to be very helpful to us in our future in securing more gifts for the institutions we represent. So I'd like to thank you for traveling here from Colorado. Thank you. We are very proud of our Sanders chocolates here in the Detroit area, so we hope you enjoy them.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'd appreciate if we could again thank Mitch Blondie for being here and for CFRE for sponsoring this presentation. And speaking of taking time to visit our sponsor tables, we have a 15-minute break now, and at 2 o'clock we will be back in this room for our plenary session. Thank you.